Hey everybody, it's Mike Young, lifestyle nutritionist with aPlantBasedDiet.org and Forever Young Nutrition Coaching. Today's a little bit different format of a video. I want to do a review and commentary, or a reading and commentary of an article that was just released the other day. Right now I'm recording this on July 22nd, 2022. There was an article entitled, "Vegans Need to Stop Exaggerating the Health Benefits of a Plant-Based Diet" by Brian Cateman on the 19th of July, just a couple days ago. So let me read you his general summary comments on the article. Then we're going to read the article. Then I'm going to give you a few things at the end. So got lots to talk about. Let's get into it. He says, sketchy claims and pseudoscience will damage the cause of eating plant-based in the long run. Let's stop the misinformation, exaggeration, and cherry picking. It's not hard to imagine why some voices for veganism might exaggerate or even fabricate health-related claims. The animal agriculture industry enacts gruesome violence against animals, as well as many of its laborers, and of course, the health of the planet. So if health is what will compel people to change their diet in a way that's beneficial for animals and the environment, it's easy to see why some activists and influencers would push nutritional facts as the most effective avenue to help end the industry. But ultimately, misinformation is only going to harm the movement's credibility. So I think what he's saying here already in the summary is, which kind of got my attention, it's in my mind, it's almost a slightly aggressive way of describing this, because there are many nuances. And now either one of two things is going on here. Either the author doesn't understand all the nuances, which I will make that assumption, even though I don't ever think that people should assume anything, or it's being used incorrectly. I know that he says things are being used incorrectly, but of course, if you know about me, you know I'm all about human health, optimizing human health. We're a completely, totally, 100% vegan organization, aPlantBasedDiet.org. I know there's differences between the two. We're going to get into that in this. But as you know, when somebody says veganism and then health claims are exaggerated, well, there's so many things in veganism. So let's get into that. Let's start by reading the article. All right. The little bit right below the title of the article, I'll read the title again. Vegans need to stop exaggerating the health benefits of a plant-based diet. Sketchy claims and pseudoscience will damage the cause of eating plant-based in the long run. It's okay to admit that there are some things we just don't know. All right, well, let's start with that. I admit, if you watch any of my videos, that I don't know it all, and I know that everyone doesn't know it all. But we also do believe, and I believe, that there is an optimal way of eating for humans. It's not necessarily the same, identical for everyone, but it's pretty darn close with a few exceptions. We're going to get into that here. All right, so he says, here's the article begins. On the internet, you'll find extreme dieters of all types, and many of them will swear to you that theirs is the only healthy way for a human to eat. At one end of the spectrum, there's Jordan Peterson with his carnivore diet. I'm not familiar with that, consisting of nothing but beef, salt, and water. Okay, I get that. At the other, frugivore, and it's probably like fruitarian diet pushed by YouTubers and their ilk, are not just vegan and raw, but almost entirely made up of fresh fruit. Yeah, so that's like a raw vegan organic fruitarianism, things like that. So he's saying that those are the two extremes. We got total meat diet on one end, and then he didn't say it, but organic raw fruit. Let's say I'm throwing organic in there, chemical free. And then of course we have the classic and unapologetically restrictive weight loss programs like the cabbage soup diet. I haven't heard of that. The master cleanse, AKA the lemonade diet. Okay. And currently trendy mono diet, where you eat only one food. And there's of course been all kinds of diets like this over the years. The Atkins diet's one that comes to mind, keto, all these types of things. They're all trendy, fatty. Yeah, I get it. So far, we are in agreement. This paragraph, I think we are in full 100% agreement on. Next paragraph. Advocates for highly restrictive diets like these tend to massively overemphasize the benefits of their approved food while seriously exaggerating the drawbacks of all other foods. Okay, so it's like an extreme, like one extreme or the other. Before I go on, let me also mention that this person has his own agenda. This person, the author here, Brian Cateman, has some books that you pay for and other media that you pay for. So there is an agenda there. For us, our agenda, of course, we have a free book. I have a free book, and I'd love for you to read it and give me your opinion, comment, share. It's called Live to 150, and you can find it at live to 150, LIVETO 150.org. It takes you straight to our YouTube playlist. You can watch it anytime, anywhere, at no cost whatsoever. So I'm not gonna get anything off of that. We might make some money on the ad revenue, but it's not by any means supporting me or anything. It's just keeping our nonprofit going. So on the internet, you'll find extreme diets of all types. Many of them will swear that it's the only way. Oh, sorry, we already read that. Advocates for highly restrictive diets like these tend to massively overemphasize the benefits of improved food while seriously exaggerating the drawbacks of all others. But these are only the most extreme examples of a supposed, quote, wellness, unquote, culture that makes huge generalizations and routinely manipulates or straight up ignores scientific evidence. Okay, I will agree, because I've had problems. I'd say my own personal opinion, a lot of the vegan plant-based documentaries that make health claims, they are very generalized, like he says. Unfortunately, there's a world of difference between like vegan junk food and health optimizing food, as I talk about in the book, Live to 150. There's a huge range. Just as much as there's a massive range in the facts that he's talking about, there is that range just within plant-based or vegan eating, and it may be even more so, I think, than this author even realizes. So they manipulate or straight up ignore scientific evidence. That sounds like the meat and dairy industry too, doesn't it? Eggs as well. It really does. I mean, I know that I don't know what the specific agenda of the author is. I don't know much about how the author is doing health-wise. None of this is mentioned. I don't know, for instance, his age. I'm guessing from what I've seen, he's probably about 19 years younger than me. I'm 52 years young. So I would guess that he would be 31. And I can tell you, 30 was when I really began my in-depth health journey. So there's a lot I didn't know, but nowadays there's the internet that's at full maturity, which wasn't the case when I was 30 in the year 2000. So who knows? I don't know the author's BMI, which I would love to know, because that's a good indicator of how someone's doing with their health. And I don't know exactly what diet the author is eating, which is also important, I think. So, however, I do find that in looking at some of the books and other media that are put out by the author, he seems to strike a, I guess, a balance. I wouldn't use that term. I'm sure that others would, where we know that not everyone's going to go to straight up health optimization right away. They're going to land somewhere in the middle. So a little bit of plants, a little bit of animal products. And so keep that in mind when we're reading this article. That's where the author is originating from anyway. Unfortunately, this approach ends up polluting even those conversations that do have some legitimate basis. For instance, veganism. Now, like I said, we could also say the same thing about the animal products industry here, all right? Because I don't believe anything they say. And I do believe that they have all the money. And it used to be, it's a few years ago, it was just the animal products industry that had all the money in the food, in the food system. But now I'd say it's a combination of the animal products industry and the junk food producers, because a lot of the animal products industries have moved over to plant-based junk foods in an effort to retain their market shares and their income and things like that. All right, so next paragraph. I'm sorry. There are plenty of health benefits for a plant-based diet, and unlike the above examples, it's not even, I'm sorry, I am keeping, I wish I could hold this where it was. How about I do this? This will be better. Okay, I see. Way better. So there are plenty of health benefits for a plant-based diet, and unlike the above examples, it's not even necessarily a particularly restrictive diet. Even non-vegans and non-vegetarians who eat primarily plant-based, this is the author's take on it, can reap the benefits. Well, they're partial benefits. They're not going to be full benefits. But the unfortunate truth is that, like most things on the internet, a grain of truth gets stretched far beyond the bounds of what science can actually prove. Okay, science can actually prove. Let's talk about science for a minute. I do believe in the scientific method. Unfortunately, we're in capitalism, and capitalism is a great system to enable people to, who create value for others to really do well in life and gain this thing we call money, right? Which is really imaginary, but you can gain lots of it if you provide value for a lot of people. So the problem with capitalism, though, is that when you get people with a lot of money, a lot of corporations, and big corporations generally run the world these days, then they start to influence the lawmakers, aka lobbyists, and they start to, get the laws passed in their favor. They start to get the press to produce what they want the press to produce, whether it's traditional press or internet. And then that bleeds over also into the scientific community, where, large amounts of money are required to fund scientific studies. And generally what you find is that the people who provide all the money for these studies, they generally end up with a study that pretty much says what they wanted it to say in the beginning. That's just a system we're in. There's not really a true independence there. And I know people bring up like double blind, all this other stuff, but still, you got to look at who's funding this. Where did the money come from? And generally, when you've got someone who is way behind and has very little voice, like us, like people who are out there for health optimization, for instance, in the latest pandemic, did you hear the government or anybody else talk about exactly what you need to do and a focus on optimizing your immune system and how to do that? Like lots of long talks on that? No, we didn't hear any of that. So that should make you question a lot of things. So that is that paragraph. Next paragraph. It's not hard to imagine why some voices for veganism might exaggerate or even fabricate health-related claims. The animal agriculture industry, okay, he's mentioning it here. Sorry, I need some water. And this is one take. The animal agriculture industry enacts gruesome violence against animals, not good, as well as many of its laborers and, of course, the health of the planet. So if health is what will compel people to change their diets in a way that's beneficial for animals and the environment, it's easy to see why some activists and influencers would push nutritional facts as the most effective avenue to help end the industry. Sure, yes, it would, if it's true. Like this author is kind of assuming, yeah, we're assuming it's true. If you do it and it's right and it's true, that's great, awesome. You're going to help out to end that industry. But as I just pointed out, that industry has a ridiculous amount of money. It's not fair in terms of the head start that they have. And they're going to do everything they can, the status quo, to make sure that things do not change. I think that should be clear to just about anybody and everybody. And also, he mentions nutritional facts. Now, that's an area that's a gray area that we're going to have to get into, because, as I mentioned, I don't even like the way things are presented when I look back at a lot of the vegan documentaries on health as to how your health is improving, because you will not necessarily improve your health. And if you read the book that I have for free, Live to 150, you understand why you can eat all kinds of junk food. You can still develop type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart issues, especially with coconut oil and other oils, all kinds of health issues on a purely vegan and plant-based diet. It all depends on how you do it. All right, next paragraph. But ultimately, misinformation is only going to harm the movement's credibility. I agree, misinformation. And unfortunately, what I've seen out there, and this is why this is kind of a hot button for me, what I've seen out there are documentaries and others that talk about health benefits. And like I said, it's not necessarily a health benefit, but folks out there in the veganism or plant-based movement are saying that you're absolutely going to get health benefits as just a general statement, and that is not true. So it actually hurts the work that we're doing with our, you can read more in the book, Live to 150 at live-to-150.org, but aPlantBasedDiet.org, it hurts our work that we're doing because we really want folks to optimize their health. We don't want animal products involved in any way whatsoever, but it's a very specific way of living. It's a lifestyle, specific lifestyle. And let me also mention that veganism is not necessarily well, it's definitely not a diet, but it may not even be a lifestyle. It's just a choice to not harm animals and to do as little harm to animals as practical and possible. It's not possible to eliminate That's just the world we live in, but you can do it to as far as practical and possible. That's what veganism is. And a lot of people say, well, plant-based eating is not vegan. Well, in our case, it is. And plant-based in general has a definition that's very hard to kind of wrap your head around or pin down. And for that reason, that's why you can get an article like this, because, you know, because there's not agreement on the definition. So ultimately, misinformation is going to harm the movement's credibility. Veganism is a more widespread idea in our society now than ever before. We can't afford to risk causing folks to dismiss the whole thing as bunk. That's a good point right there. We don't want to lie in any way. We don't want to lie. I mean, in a way, if you think of veganism, a lot of vegans who are just purely, I say, ethical only vegans are upset with society because we feel like they were lied to most of their lives to that point where they understood what veganism is and the importance of it. And the last thing we want to do is make it seem like people who are vegan are doing the same thing. So I totally agree with the author on this point. And all of this misinformation, exaggeration, and cherry picking is a shame because it obscures the actual strong evidence of the benefits of eating less meat, eggs, or dairy, meaning lower risk of heart disease, stroke, and several types of cancer, to name just a few. However, as I mentioned earlier, you can get heart disease, stroke, and several types of cancer from eating fully plant-based, fully vegan, 100%. It all depends on how you do it, exactly how you do it. So my point here is different from the authors, and this is what I think we need to focus on is what is, first of all, the author may not be willing to accept that there is a diet that's optimal for humans and a lifestyle that's optimal for humans. And if the author isn't there yet in the author's journey, then that's okay. As I said, I think the author is probably almost 20 years younger than me, and I know where I was 20 years ago. So it makes sense. And it's a journey for everyone, including me. I don't claim to know it all, but I do believe that there's an optimal diet for humans with a few exceptions, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Regrettably, the conversations around veganism tend to be rife with pseudoscience. And that's, again, I kind of question pseudoscience. I kind of question the entire scientific community at this point when I see and hear that people, word on the street is that medical journals are basically, all you have to do is you can buy the I mean, if you think about it, you can buy your study showing up in a medical journal. It's just the way science is right now. It's run through this capitalist society, and it really, unfortunately, doesn't allow for truth to be conveyed all the time. You would think it would. I think a lot of people hear the word science and they think, okay, truth is being conveyed. If it's under science, conveyed all the time. Whether if it's under veganism, oh no, because they might be making something up. But the reality is there's just as much half-truths and untruths in the scientific community as there are in veganism, as there are in the plant-based movement, as there are in the animal products industry. It's just the way society is, and people are usually motivated financially to, exaggerate, make stuff up, like you're saying. So it's not hard to find vegan influencers who spout unproven theories as though they were fact, utilize confusing and misguided logic, or say things that are plainly false, like, for instance, that a vegan diet can change your eye color. I've heard that. I can't prove that one way or the other. The people who say that, just so you know, supposedly are eating mostly or fully organic, raw, fruitarian diets. And the question we go back to again is there an optimal diet for humans? If there is, maybe it can, but I'm not saying that it can. I don't know. I haven't experienced that myself. But yeah, of course, motivation. It's like this author is motivated to drive you over to buy his books or watch his media products. Just like the animal products industry is motivated to make sure that all science that gets out there, as much as possible anyway, isn't detrimental to their sales. These types of things. We know this. This is not any kind of groundbreaking information here. Even though medical doctors have been known to make dramatic and shaky claims, such as that a single meal high in animal fat can cripple, in quotes there, a person's arteries, citing one single decades-old study that featured just 10 subjects and no control group. All right, well, that brings up doctors and the medical care system, the healthcare system, the sick care system. I talk about that a lot in my book, Live to 150. Again, I highly encourage you go over there, live to 150, live, L-I-V-E-T-O 150.org. I don't make any money off the sales of that book. Just watch it. If you don't like it, don't watch it again. If you do, share it with others. I have a feeling you might like it if you're even going to go over there. So the problem is that the sick care system, like I said, you say the healthcare system, but it's really the sick care system, the disease management system. Everyone knows that medical doctors, physicians, general practitioners, etc., people who are involved in the maintenance of people's health have little to no experience or training or classes in nutrition. This is the crux of the problem. They are just out there and they are very good at managing symptoms and maintaining people regardless of their circumstances, regardless of what they're doing. But true health is arrived at by looking at this from a root cause perspective and dealing with the root cause. And of course, if there is no optimal diet for humans, then that maybe throws this whole thing out the window, which is kind of what this author is trying to say. Like, don't even bother. Hey, just go halfway, just move over, closer to plant-based and away from animal products. You'll be okay, I guess, is the conclusion of this article. But I don't believe that. That is not in my belief system. And yes, most of mine is based on experience, because I cannot go into the scientific community and know that everything that's coming out of there is truth. In fact, so much of it is not. I've got to base it on like reasoning, deduction, personal experience, life experience. Just watching people who are sick gives you a tremendous amount of experience. Watching why people die. What are the reasons why they die? Again, that's a huge amount of experience. All right, next paragraph. You'll hear people saying that nothing less than a 100% plant-based diet can be considered optimally healthy. Hey, this sounds like he's talking about me. Yeah, that's right. I think that nothing less. However, maybe he's not talking about me, because I do say you should go out there. You know what? If you're doing a great job and you're eating health optimizing food like 100% of the time, just like it says here in the sentence in the article, then please go out by all means, have at least one, maybe two cheat meals a week. Eat whatever you want. For me, I'm a vegan, so I'm not going to ever say go eat animal products. But you can eat some vegan junk food, which tastes and looks a lot of times just like the animal products it replaces. So there we go. All right, when the reality is, he's refuting that statement, we just don't have the data to back that up. You're right, we don't. We don't. Can you imagine if we had the data to back that up, how things would shift overnight, how the paradigm would just shift and entire industries would be destroyed? Yeah, there's a reason why you're not going to get that. And I think we all understand why. So you're just going to have to use your own reasoning and deduction and intelligence to figure this out. And that's why we have a role here as our nonprofit as well. So there are plenty of studies that do support the general idea that plant-based eating is healthy, which again, I just debunked that, okay? The general idea, okay. But you can specifically be incredibly unhealthy eating all plants, no animal products, 100% vegan in one way or another. And plenty of them are recent and reliable methodologies, but even good diets can be woefully misrepresented. Correlation often gets mistaken for causation, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to isolate very specific inputs and outcomes, like does cheese cause cancer? Because human biology and lifestyles are complicated. Yes, they are complicated. They definitely are. But the author even cites that, or alludes that animal product diets are causing stroke, heart attacks, and cancer. Okay, if the author even thinks that and suggests that you move over to plants, then he must know something else that he's not saying, is my my take of that. And yes, it's very complicated. The lifestyle is extremely complicated. That's why I'm probably gonna have 150 chapters in my book. It's not just the food, although probably 80% of it is the food. It's a lot of habits. It's a lot of psychology. It's a lot of the fact that a lot of people who say they do a certain thing, they don't even do it. Okay, because there are so many distractions and there are so many temptations and bad choices that surround you in advanced societies all over. It's everywhere. It's a giant mess out there right now. So that's what they're trying to do, is throw some doubt out there. So you just say, throw your hands up in the air and go, We don't know anything. I'll just do whatever the hell I want. And that's the wrong conclusion. Here's an examples. James Beard Award-winning Washington Post columnist, Washington Post. Tamar Hospital points to the Bloomberg article, the headline which boldly claims 1 avocado a week cuts risk of heart disease by 20%, which sounds huge. But a closer look reveals that the study not only demonstrates an association between avocados and heart disease, not a casual relationship, so just an association. Do avocados cut the risk of heart disease, or do people who make overall heart healthy lifestyle choices just eat a lot of avocados? Based on the study alone, we can't say that the conclusion at best is a loose interpretation of the facts. Well, one takeaway from this I will give is that yes, an avocado is a plant, it's better than an animal product. And an avocado does have nutrition in it, but avocado has a very high percentage of calories and fat. You should not be eating them as a whole avocado. You shouldn't even be eating guacamole, but you can have a little bit of avocado. And if you want to learn more, you got to go to my book, Live to 150, okay? This is very complicated. Just like this author here says, it is. And what this just said, this is a waste of a paragraph. I'm just going to skip right over it because, well, for what I said, it's very complicated. That's the one thing I'll agree on what the author just said. And the issues with nutritional science as we know it today go even deeper. For one thing, many of these studies, including the avocado one, rely on self-reported information from study participants. That's putting a lot of faith in regular people to accurately and honestly measure their own eating habits, which human beings are famously bad at. That's right. This is one of the, well, actually, when the input data is already in question, it's hard to trust any conclusions drawn from it. He just described the entire medical system. This is why I work outside of the medical system. I am separate. I'm a lifestyle nutritionist, but I don't have any accreditations, whatever, from the system because I don't want to be part of it. It is so messed up. Even now, for the most part, short of imaging tests and blood tests, so much of medicine, and I should put that in quotes, medicine is practice, which we don't practice, based on just hearing some things that the patient is saying to the doctor. And it's crazy because we live in a time where that should not be happening. We have enough ways to gather data remotely, enough ways to monitor people with video. There shouldn't be these things, but this is the kind of thing, all these questions are drawn, like I agree with the author says, and because questions are drawn, it's very hard to prove anything, but that's the system as we know it now. Someone designed that system, someone can redesign it. Even putting that aside, this is the next paragraph. Observational studies don't allow scientists to randomize their study subjects. If we're just noting that what real people are actually doing, we can't separate the elements we want to examine, for instance, meat consumption from other factors like income, education, gender, smoking, drinking behavior, and what else they eat. Of course, yeah, I agree with this. As a result, the kind of information we get from these studies is imprecise, and unless the results include every dramatic, statistically significant trends, it's risky to extrapolate much from them. I agree. Another reason why I said earlier that these studies, all of these little things that the author points out are ways that people who want to see a certain result from a study will get that result. All right. It's bad. Just like we know the author of this article knows animal products are less than ideal. And guess what? We know, for instance, Dr. T. Colin Campbell in his book, The China Study, he shows through a scientific method that animal protein causes cancer. It's still not on anybody's cancer causing list. We still don't hear it from anybody because there's too much momentum against that. Okay. Maybe eventually one day, but that's just one example that I'm giving here. Next paragraph. But getting the kind of data we would reliably work with is more or less impossible. To truly control a study, researchers would have to literally control everything eaten by hundreds of participants or more over a period of years in order to eliminate all or even most potential confounding factors. Real human lives are just too complicated to regiment the way a true lab study requires. Okay, I will agree with this. This is why we're trying to form a new generation of humans who are complying with what we do believe is the optimal diet for humans. Some folks have tried this in the past, such as the blue zones, and they have that data. The China study also has that data. So I agree, you need this kind of data. We need people to change their lifestyle. We need to stop worshiping whatever the American lifestyle, standard American diet is, because that's where people are going unless we try to go against the psychology and to educate, which is what we're trying to do. And we really hope that there's enough people, and I do believe there will be, to where we can show this through lifestyle, through results over generations. Furthermore, this is the next paragraph. The biological world is just more complicated than we'd like to think. Different people have different nutritional needs. Okay. For people who with certain gastrointestinal conditions, eating fully vegan isn't feasible. Yeah, like he's probably talking about stomach stapling. Okay, gastric bypass. Yeah, they tell you to start eating animal products. It's ridiculous. Don't get the surgery. Result of that is don't get the surgery. Okay. Because it doesn't address the root cause. It just manages symptoms, right? Yep. But even barring that, human bodies are unique, and one person may not possess a particular food in the exact way another person would. Okay. With that in mind, one size fits all health advice of any kind should probably be subject to some heavy skepticism. Given all this, it's no wonder that doctors, nutritionists, researchers, and other credentialed experts, not to mention third-party interpreters of research like journalists and other media figures, tend to give diverse, often contradictory advice. Well, like I said, I'm just using the example he gave about gastric bypass surgery, and I'm assuming that's what it was because it sounds like it. But we don't ever want people to eat what they're allergic to or that they're hypersensitive to. It's still plants, but just don't eat the stuff that causes problems for you. It's as simple as that. That's a takeaway. Aside from that, no disagreement. We have agreement. Okay. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay. Next paragraph. Meanwhile, an alarming portion of the population and even of the scientific community are apparently indifferent to nutritional science altogether. Fewer than 20% of medical schools in the US have a single required course in nutrition, and the majority of medical schools teach less than 25 hours of nutritional education in the 4 years it takes to complete an MD program. Like I mentioned earlier, we're in agreement with this. All of this despite the fact that the diet-related disease such as heart disease and type 2 diabetes are among the leading causes of death in the US today. And of course, let's not forget that we have the highest in the United States cost per patient of like over $10,000 or $11,000 now, and some of the worst health worldwide. So clearly the system is not working, clearly. Next paragraph, our diet obsessed culture is constantly searching for a magic bullet to fix all the diet related problems we face. Magic bullet. Well, I guess some people do want a pill, but that's not what we are pushing. We're not pushing pills here at our nonprofit. We try, except for B12, that's it. We tried complicated, often punishing and sometimes even dangerous methods to ostensibly, quote, get healthy, often a euphemism for, quote, lose weight. Based on so-called empirical evidence that's shaky at best, the fact is nutritional science just isn't at a point where we can confidently rule out sweeping directives on how people should eat. Nutritional science. Yeah, it's not going to be there for a while. So do we wait for it to catch up, or do we actually do the work ourselves and try to do the best we can with what we know? That's the question. That's what I think we should do. The author, I think, feels differently. Very low expectations, put that way. Very mediocre expectations. Sure, there are some points that the medical community has reached some degree of consensus on. For instance, the American Heart Association tells us that eating a lot of meat is not a healthy way to lose weight. They also say a lot of other weird things, especially for folks who, I put that in there, who have or are at the risk of heart disease, especially, of course. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says to avoid processed food and sugary drinks in order to lower our own risk of heart disease and stroke. Again, they say some other weird things. And the American Cancer Society tells us to eat a variety of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Yes, they do. And they have alcohol at their benefits that I've seen. And of course, animal products as well. So it's not good. Those things cause cancer. The red meat and the alcohol are like group 1 carcinogens. So just keep that in mind. I had to throw that in there when I was reading it. Okay, next paragraph. Eat your veggies and avoid soda are probably not groundbreaking bits of advice for most people. And they're certainly not going to sell any flashy new diet books. Like this author is trying to push, even though he is not mentioning it. We know how it works. Anyone who's sprouting granular advice on exactly what and what not to eat probably is operating more on faith than facts. Again, the facts are what's in question. Are there any facts out there? And if there are, how do we even prove it? It's such a mess out there right now in 2022. I hope people look back at this time and just, I don't know, they'll probably laugh and be so happy they didn't have to live during that time if they care about their health anyway, which we know people do. They say they don't just because it requires a lot of work in this day and age as opposed to being easy. We try to make it easy though. Perhaps a 100% vegan diet is the healthiest way for humans to eat. No, not necessarily, as I talked about earlier. Stop making, this author is making generalizations. A specific form of a 100% vegan diet, a hyper-specific form is more accurate. After all, but we just don't know for sure. All right. It's past time vegan influencers and activists embrace that that scientific reality that we just don't know for sure. And as I said, science is bought and paid for. So what exactly is meant by that? I don't know, other than the state that we do need to focus better on exactly which vegan diet is health optimizing. I think we can agree on that. And tell people that the other half of the food, vegan food is actually health destroying. It would be far more accurate if we conveyed that. The credibility of veganism and the future of a more sustainable and compassionate world does depend on it. Okay, very good. Also, Dr. Will Tuttle, if you ever listen to him, he's great. He's at a lot of our events. He does say that if you don't eat organic food, are you really vegan? And there's a question. There's a lot of people in the vegan community that don't necessarily even understand that concept, because you're hurting the birds and bees if you're eating plants that were sprayed with chemicals and pesticides and things like that, right? That's pretty obvious, I would think, right? But that means you should only be eating organic food. Like, was organic food even mentioned in this article? No. All right, now let's go to some notes that I have. Got just a couple more minutes to wrap this up. He says that, you know, the main point is veganism is not necessarily the healthiest or the only healthy diet for people on earth. Pseudoscience. Don't agree with that. It's got to be hyper specific, like we said. That's proof a plant-based diet can be healthy. It's not proof of the only healthy diet. Well, people can smoke cigarettes and drink whiskey and still live to 95. That's an anomaly. Okay, I know it's not the only way to go, but let's go with the odds that you're going to do well, because health is the most important thing. As far as I know, we only have one life, as far as I know right now. It's interesting how a lot of this comes down to this from the author: science, education, philosophy of science, what's knowable or knowable or unknowable. Hey, a lot of stuff is not. But plants, they're around here, they live. They seem to know what humans want, right? I think the author is saying that, so he must know he's on the right track. I'm sympathetic. Veganism is clearly among the most ethical and environmental diets, so it creates incentives to say it's categorical, and to also say that it's categorically the healthy option as well. But it is, just has to be a super hyper specific version of veganism, which is in my book, Live to 150, live-to-150.org. All right. There are others that do not agree, saying that the author, just reading some comments that I've seen online, the author is actually doing the veganism movement a disservice. But again, no one's pointing out the difference between the vegan junk food and the vegan health optimizing food, the plant-based junk food and the plant-based health optimizing food. That wasn't even discussed here. This is the biggest thing that people need to focus on. That's what we focus on. There is a difference. That's why we have our healthy vegan food, healthyveganfood.info, healthyveganfood.info. Go there to find out more. Get your restaurants and food providers, food producers to offer these items. We would love to see it, because we realize that so much of the food, if not most of the food out there that's vegan and plant-based, is health destroying. I need to say that. I want to say that. I wish I didn't have to say that. Oh, okay. I think that's about it. The one caveat, like I said, is if you're allergic to certain foods, if you are hypersensitive to oxalates, lectins, things like this, other things, don't eat the plants. We're not saying that this is going to work for everyone. Let me know your comments. Please share this with others. Thank you so much for watching. And again, give me your comments, because I might make a follow-up video on this too, but go and read our book too, live-to-150.org. I am so glad this article came out. It triggered me, it did, but I'm glad it came out because we got to talk about it, and hopefully folks will talk more about it. So thank you to the author, even though we've never met, for producing that article so that I could produce this video. And have a great day, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Bye.